how do you memorize thousands of masail in fiqh and different Islamic sciences and you retain it and you're able to record it? I mentioned in the previous video that you should summarize what you study and then you should summarize that and memorize it. What does that mean? I didn't actually explain it. I'm going to give you examples now, even if the video is long. I didn't want to do that before. Khashyatul itala, you know, being fearful that the video is going to be long, but I don't care because some brothers requested me to do this. Okay, so the problem we mentioned was sometimes there's certain books of fiqh which are so big. For example, Zad al-Mustaqni' is a book which has 3,000 masail in it. It's this thick. How are you going to memorize all of that? That's problematic. Okay, so what you do, I'd say, is certain things from a book which are easy to forget. For example, when the issue comes and it mentions a list of things, for example, the conditions for istijmar. Istijmar is different to istinja. Istinja is when you use water. Istijmar is when you don't use water. The conditions, you memorize it from the book because there's a lot of conditions. For example, طاهر منقي غير عظم وروث وطعام ومحترم متصل بحيوان, etc. You guys get the point. When it comes to the shurut of shuf'a, you guys don't need to know what these things are. I'm just giving an example. You know, I made videos on shuf'a, etc. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so for example, it has to be bi'iwad mali. You have to pay the same amount that the mushtari paid. You can't give it to your jiran. It has to be that which you can do a qism of. It has to be aqalat. It can't be manqunat, etc. The Hanabila mentioned these conditions, and there's difference of opinion, but you get the point. This is how you start studying fiqh properly. Every chapter you take it, you memorize the definition for each chapter, and then you memorize the conditions and the furud. For example, the furud, the obligations of salah. Okay, sorry, the shurut of salah, the condition of salah, Islam, taklif, dukhul al-waqt, niyya, istiqbal al-qibla, satr al-awra, tahara, etc. Of course, underneath these, there's many masail, but you start like this and you memorize it like that from the matan word for word, because that you're not going to forget. Whether you can do it from a matan or there's some books, there's poetry, they summarize these things. Okay, so we get that. That's number one. Number two is when you've done this with a lot of chapters of fiqh now, and you memorize a lot of chapters. For example, I'm going to give examples to show this is something which works. We were in here, and you know, there's chapters of fiqh that talk about sifat and shurut that you're allowed to place on when you do buy and sell. You know, it talks about salam, qard, rahan, daman, kafala, hawala, sulh, hajar, wakala, etc. You guys get the point. You know, so what you do now, I'm going to give you an example with a chapter called Wadi'a. Wadi'a is a chapter where it talks about, for example, if I own something and I want to give it to someone to look after for me. Okay, this is Wadi'a. So I want to mention some masail and I'm going to tell you how you summarize them and memorize them. For example, the Hanabila, in the books of the Hanabila, the Fuqaha talk about these masail. They say that if I give someone a Wadi'a and he puts it, remember this word hirz. Hirz means the place which is appropriate for you to put that thing. Okay, so the hirz for somebody's car is going to be in a. Sorry, let me think of a different example. The hirz for somebody's phone is going to be his pocket, for example. Okay, meaning if I give somebody something to look after and he puts it in other than his hirz and something happens to it, he has to make up for that. He has to compensate for that. Okay, so if he puts it in other than his pocket, he has to make up for that. So you guys understand what hirz is. So I'm going to mention some masail and I'm going to show you how you memorize it easily. Okay, for example, in Hanbali Madhab, they say if somebody takes a wadi'a for somebody and he puts it fi ghayri hirzihi, and other than his hirz, and something happens to it, he has to do the daman of it. He has to make up for it, compensate for it. That's number one. Number two, if I give somebody my phone and I told him put it in your pocket, and he doesn't put it in his pocket, okay, he puts it somewhere else which is less safer than his pocket, and something happens to it. Again, he has to make up for that, compensate, because he didn't follow what I said. Number three, if I do ta'yin of a hirz, I tell him put in the phone in his pocket, but he puts it in a place which is safer, and he puts it in a zip pocket. Yeah, the fuqaha talk about this, and something happens to it. He doesn't have to make up for that. Why not? Because he put it in a place which is safer. However, if something happened to it due to him being negligent, for example, he opened it and he opened his pocket, etc., and someone came and he robbed it because it was outside of his hirz. You see what I'm saying? So I mentioned that four masail here connected to this hirz thing. So what you do is you memorize these four masail. You're going to be studying with the teacher. He's going to tell you, you're going to memorize it. Okay, you write it down on paper. You memorize it, however long it takes. And then what you do, you get another paper, you just write hirz next to it, hirz, and you write next to it 4. Okay, so you know under this one word, there's 4 masail which comes underneath it, and you're gonna remember it from that one word. Sometimes a good way to understand stuff and memorize stuff is you have 1 2 words which remind you of different masail. You see what I'm saying? For example, when it comes to you basically do that with the whole book, um, and then you can get like a small book note, a notebook which is this small, and in it it's filled up with this method that I told you, and from that you can review thousands of masail, if that makes sense. And then you basically end up memorizing that, and once you do that, it's stuck. It's solid in your head. I hope that makes sense. Shall I give another example? Let me think of one. What else? For example, when it comes to water now, in the Hanbali madhab, they say that of course water which is tahur, sorry, water which is qullatayn, which is a large amount. Okay, qullatayn is a large amount of water. Differ about how much that is exactly. Okay, once the water reaches that amount, um, if impurity goes in it, it doesn't make it impure unless it changes its color, its smell, its taste. Okay. However, the Hanabila, they mentioned three things which you can change the water state and make it pure from it, once it's been najis to pure. How is that possible? Okay, they mentioned, for example, if that water is a large amount and it has some najasa, you take the najasa out and the rest is still more than qullatayn. Okay, and it's not, and the effects of that najasa is not there. Number one. Number two, they say if the najasa got removed by itself in water which is qullatayn. Okay, remember that condition. Number three, they mentioned, for example, um, um, for example, there's a small amount of water has najasa in it, but you add on to that water qullatayn. Why? Because when you have, like, for example, a small amount of water this much which has impurity in it, and you chuck qullatayn on it, because there's so much, it's going to completely make the najasa go. And Allah Alam, that's what the Hanabila mentioned. So what you do now, once you memorize these, you write down تغيير تغيير الماء من النجس إلى الطهور, or something like that, which basically means in Arabic, changing water from impure to pure. Okay, and right next to it, you write three, because I mentioned three masail. Okay, and once you memorize it, once you basically you're going to look at that and you're going to remember those masail, if that makes sense. So that makes it easier to review now, because now your revision is not looking at what every masala one by one. It's like this, and you would have memorized it like this. Does that make sense? It might take a while to get used to this, but it's a very good way. Yeah, Allah Alam. There's other ways as well and other tips as well, but this is just brief. I hope this is beneficial. Allah Alam.